Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive into the latest Disney news. We're going beyond those cutesy headlines you see everywhere else.
Right. It's about digging a little deeper.
Exactly. We're talking about the stuff that even those of you with annual passes and Mickey Mouse tattoos might have scrolled right past.
And trust me, there's some juicy stuff to unpack today.
Oh, there definitely is. We've got Disney tackling affordable housing. Who knew?
A hurricane gunning straight for the Magic Kingdom.
And of course, a sneak peek at what culinary delights await at this year's Jollywood Nights. Because priorities.
Hey, a Disney fan's gotta eat right.
Always. But seriously, folks, by the end of this deep dive, you'll see these headlines aren't just fluff pieces. They're actually painting a really interesting picture of where the company's at right now.
The House of Mass is facing some real-world challenges.
And honestly, I think they're handling it in a way that even Walt himself would find kind of fascinating.
I'm inclined to agree, so let's jump right into it with a headline that had me scratching my head at first. Disney's building a neighborhood.
I know, right? And not just any neighborhood. We're talking almost 1,400 affordable housing units right near Disney World.
Yeah, a stone's throw from the most magical place on Earth. You've got this massive project aimed at tackling the very real problem of affordable housing in Orlando.
Which is huge because, let's be real here, Orlando's not exactly known for being the most affordable place to live, especially if you're working in the tourism industry.
You're preaching to the choir. It's kind of ironic when you think about it. The very people who make the magic happen at Disney often can't even afford to live anywhere near the parks.
So is this whole neighborhood thing just Disney being charitable?
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. Don't forget, Disney's a business first and foremost.
True. They've got to answer to those shareholders.
Exactly. But this project has actually generated some controversy, too.
Really? I'm surprised because on the surface, it seems like a win-win.
You'd think so, right? But when Disney first announced the project, a lot of local residents pushed back.
Why? What were they concerned about?
Traffic, mostly. I mean, can you imagine the influx of cars with that many new residents? It's a valid concern.
Yeah, I can see that. So what did Disney do?
Well, they scaled back the project a bit, reduced the number of units to try and mitigate those traffic concerns.
Interesting. It's like they're trying to find that sweet spot between doing good and keeping everyone happy.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because Disney didn't just reduce the number of units, they also added a little something extra.
Oh yeah, what's that?
They're including a 2-acre public park as part of the development. And not just for residents either, it'll be open to everyone.
Now that's a smart move. Almost like they're trying to sweeten the deal a little bit.
Exactly. It's a strategic move, for sure. By creating this public space, they're trying to position themselves as more than just a corporation.
More like a member of the community.
Precisely. It's about fostering goodwill and showing that they're invested in the well-being of the entire area.
It's a good look for them, for sure.
Yeah.
But it also makes you wonder, is this a sign of things to come?
Ooh, that's a great question. Is this Disney dipping their toes into a whole new way of approaching real estate and community relations? Only time will tell.
Speaking of new approaches, let's talk about something a little closer to home for many of us. Disney cracking down on password sharing.
Yes, the move that had everyone comparing them to Netflix.
Right. It's like they saw what Netflix was doing and thought, hey, we could do that too.
Well, they're both feeling the pressure to increase revenue and control those subscriber numbers, especially with streaming competition getting fiercer by the day.
And let's not forget the ever-increasing cost of creating all that must-see content.
You're telling me those Marvel shows don't pay for themselves?
Exactly. But here's the thing. Disney's strategy is a little different, isn't it? They're not just shutting down shared accounts altogether.
You're right. They're introducing this extra member option where you can basically pay to share your account with others outside your household.
It's a curious move. Almost like they're trying to find a compromise between cracking down and keeping those families who share accounts happy.
It could be a way to soften the blow, especially since they're also raising subscription prices.
Good point. Be interesting to see how that plays out. Okay, so we've got Disney playing landlord and cracking down on password sharing.
What's next? Are they going to start controlling the weather too?
Well, about that. Turns out even the Mouse House isn't immune to Mother Nature's wrath. Hurricane Helene is swirling its way towards Disney World as we speak.
Yeah, it looks like Mickey might have to break out the reindeer.
Thankfully, it's not projected to be a direct hit, but even a glancing blow from a hurricane can disrupt operations.
Absolutely. They've already announced closures for Typhoon Lagoon, and several tours at Animal Kingdom have been canceled.
Which makes total sense. Safety first. But here's a funny little detail I saw. Resort pools are staying open. For now.
You're kidding. Are there really people who'd brave a hurricane for a dip in the pool?
Hey, never underestimate the dedication of a busy fanatic on vacation.
Touché. Speaking of dedication, let's shift gears to a topic that's been generating a lot of buzz lately. Disney's approach to accessibility.
Yeah, specifically, their Disability Access Service, or DAS, has been a bit of a hot topic.
It's definitely sparked a lot of conversation and debate, especially in comparison to how Universal Studios is handling things.
Right. Universal recently reversed course on requiring guests to use a third-party accessibility card from a company called IBCCES after facing some backlash.
A lot of people felt like it was an unnecessary hurdle, especially for those who already have documentation for their disabilities.
Especially since Universal was partnering with this external company, IBCCES, which not everyone was familiar with.
Exactly. It seemed like an extra layer of complexity that wasn't really necessary. But here's the thing, while Universal backpedaled on that requirement, Disney's actually doubled down on changes to its own DAS program.
Yeah, they've made some tweaks, like extending the DAS validity period to 240 days, which brings them a bit closer to Universal's year-long allowance. But it hasn't appeased everyone.
There have been protests organized by disability advocates who feel like the changes create more barriers than they solve.
It's a tough situation for sure. You've got Disney trying to prevent misuse of the system while also ensuring that those who genuinely need accommodations can access them.
It's all about finding that balance, which, as we've seen today, is something Disney's constantly striving for.
And speaking of balance, it's time to talk about the most important meal of the day. At least when you're at Disney World.
Brunch.
Close. We're diving into the delicious details of this year's Jollywood Nights food guide.
Ah, yes. Because no trip to Disney is complete without an Instagram-worthy snack or two.
Or 3 or 4, let's be real.
Especially when they're as elaborate and decadent as the offerings at Jollywood Nights.
Seriously, have you seen the pictures in this guide? It's
Yep.
like they hired a professional food stylist.
Everything looks absolutely mouth-watering. But here's the thing about all those gourmet goodies at Jollywood Nights last year, they led to some seriously long lines.
People were waiting longer for their Christmas cookies than for the rides.
No joke. It actually started to detract from the overall experience for some guests.
Well, nobody wants to spend their entire night waiting in line for food, no matter how delicious it looks.
Exactly. And that's why I found this one suggestion from the guide particularly interesting.
Oh, yeah?
What is it? They're suggesting that Disney consider offering some of these special menu items earlier in the evening, even before the party officially starts.
That's a thought-provoking idea.
Right? It would give guests more flexibility and potentially alleviate some of that congestion during the party itself.
Plus, it could be a win-win for Disney, too. They'd still get to maintain the exclusivity of the event while also improving the overall guest experience.
It's all about finding creative solutions. And let's be real, Disney's never been one to shy away from a little innovation.
True that. They're always tinkering and tweaking, trying to create the most magical experience possible.
Which, when you think about it, ties back to everything we've discussed today.
You're right. From affordable housing to accessibility to even something as seemingly simple as food lines, Disney's constantly adapting and evolving.
It's like they're on this quest to find that perfect balance between nostalgia and progress.
And that's what makes them so fascinating to watch. They're not afraid to try new things, to push boundaries, and to challenge the status quo.
And in a world that often feels stuck in its ways, that's a breath of fresh pixie dust.
I like that. A breath of fresh pixie dust. I think Walt would approve.
Me too. Me too.
All right, so we've covered Disney's foray into affordable housing, their crackdown on password sharing, and a hurricane threatening to dampen some pixie dust.
What a mix. Right.
It really is. But now let's talk about something a little more appetizing.
Oh, you mean Jollywood Nights?
You know it. Specifically, this incredible food guide we found that breaks down all the culinary delights you can experience at this year's event.
Yeah, the pictures alone are making my mouth water.
Seriously. I'm starting to think a holiday trip to Disney World might be in order.
No, yeah, you and me both. But you know, all this talk about gourmet food actually reminds me of something we touched on earlier. Disney's constant evolution and adaptation.
Oh, absolutely. They're always trying to stay ahead of the curve, and that includes upping their culinary game.
Right. Gone are the days of basic burgers and fries. Disney's really leaning into those unique Instagrammable food experiences, especially at these special events.
And Jollywood Nights is a prime example. Last year, they went all out with the food and drinks.
They really did, which, you know, is great in theory, but it actually led to some logistical issues.
Oh yeah, like what?
Long lines, mostly. People were waiting forever for food, which ended up cutting into their actual party time.
I can see that being a problem. Nobody wants to spend their magical night waiting in a queue that rivals Space Mountain.
Exactly. And that's why this suggestion from the food guide caught my eye.
Oh, do tell.
They suggested that Disney consider offering some of the Jollywood Nights menu items earlier in the evening, even before the party officially starts.
That's interesting. So like a pre-party snack strategy.
Well, exactly. It could be a win-win. Guests get more flexibility, the lines are potentially shorter during the party, and Disney still gets to maintain the allure of those exclusive treats.
It's a thought-provoking idea for sure. And let's be honest, Disney loves to experiment with new ways to enhance the guest experience.
Absolutely. Remember when they introduced mobile ordering? Totally changed the game.
Game changer for sure. But, this whole discussion about Jollywood Nights and the food lines, it really highlights that delicate balance Disney is always trying to strike.
You're right. They want to create these amazing immersive experiences, but they also have to be mindful of the practicalities.
Like making sure people can actually get a gingerbread cookie without missing the fireworks.
Exactly. And it's not just about food lines, right? We've seen this balancing act play out in all the headlines we've discussed today.
It's true. From affordable housing to accessibility, Disney's constantly trying to figure out how to meet the needs of a changing world while also preserving that core Disney magic.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure, but honestly, I think it's what makes them so fascinating to follow.
I agree. It's like they're writing a new chapter in the Disney story, one that's still being written in real time.
And we're all just along for the ride.
And what a ride it is, full of twists, turns, and of course, a little bit of pixie dust. Speaking of which, I think it's really interesting is even with all this talk about challenges and changes, Disney's popularity doesn't seem to be waning one bit.
Not even a little.
Like those parks are packed, merchandise is flying off the shelves. Disney is a streaming powerhouse.
It's true. You can't deny their staying power.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder, what is it about Disney that keeps people so captivated?
Well, for one thing, they're masters at tapping into that sense of nostalgia.
Oh, absolutely. Those childhood memories run deep.
Exactly. And it's not just about reliving the past, either. Disney also offers this sense of escapism, this chance to step into a world where anything is possible.
And let's be real, in today's world, a little escapism isn't such a bad thing.
Not at all. We all need a break from reality sometimes, and who better to provide that than Disney?
They've got the market cornered on magic, that's for sure.
They do, and they know it. But I also think there's something to be said for their ability to evolve with the times.
You're right. They're not afraid to try new things, to push boundaries, to experiment.
Exactly. They're constantly innovating, finding new ways to tell stories, to create experiences, to reach new audiences.
And I think that's what makes them so fascinating to follow as a company.
I agree. They're a bit of a paradox, this blend of tradition and innovation.
It's a tough line to walk, but somehow they managed to pull it off.
And they've been doing it for almost a century.
Which begs the question, what does the next century hold for the House of Mouse?
Now that is the million-dollar question. But if I had to guess, I'd say we can expect even more magic, more innovation, and maybe a few more surprises along the way.
One thing's for sure, whatever Disney does, it's sure to be entertaining.
Absolutely. So for anyone listening out there who thinks they've got Disney all figured out, just wait.
This is one story that's far from over, and we can't wait to see what happens next. That's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for joining us on this magical deep dive. Remember, the magic lives on even after the fireworks.